Hello and welcome back to Grapple Theory. Now today we have a very special guest joining us for an exclusive chat. It is none other than Tom Dawkins, better known to plenty of BritWres fans as Cara Noir. Hi Tom, how are you doing? How's everything going?
Yeah, everything's going. I'm incredibly busy. That way.
I was going to say, you like to keep yourself busy, don't you? You have plenty going on.
Yeah, I'm not one to kind of like wait and see and wait for things to happen. Like if I feel like there's some sort of like stagnation or something needs to change or something needs to, I kind of always want to push it a little bit further. So if there's any spare time, it always gets filled in some way.
Which is...
And yeah, like it was, after not being able to do anything last year, really, and kind of having to kind of like pivot our business to an online format, which is really hard for gymnastics because it's very hands-on and very physical.
Yeah, absolutely.
Moving from that to a format, and then like realizing that wrestling is going to take a long while to kind of like recover. Not only because everything that happened last year with speaking out and and COVID as well. It's going to be a slow regrowth, and people are going to be worried about opening. So let's be proactive and do something where I can, build something new within wrestling, and so yeah, it's a bit of a interesting step that we've decided to take.
No, absolutely, and I was going to ask you about this later, but as you mentioned it, we'll come on to PlayFight in a little bit. But you mentioned speaking out and everything like that, and we've spoken to a couple of other wrestlers, and it seems like there's this sort of perhaps an apprehension to come back too quickly into wrestling for companies and for certain wrestlers as well. Do you think that BritWres and I guess indies as well abroad can recover from this, can get back to sort of day-to-day activity, obviously in a safer way?
Yeah, like it is 100% possible. I think it's there's definitely spaces for companies to kind of put in safety protocols for their workers and to make the environment safe for the audience members that are kind of watching the product. And I think it's a learning curve for the promoters and the audience, and it will be a slightly different way of doing things. I think that the shows will come back to the capacity that hopefully I'd like to think the shows will come back to the capacity that they were running at before. But again, wrestling always goes through peaks and troughs. I've been wrestling for 10 years, and one of my first matches was in front of 12 people. And that's and I kind of started wrestling when it was starting to rise up. So I have experienced what it's like to wrestle when it was down, and it will come back round again because it always does. And that's why people like Jody Fleisch and Doug Williams are so, because they were there in the trenches when it was down, and they helped raise the entire the scene. Even like Dino Mark and stuff like that, and they are still there, and they'll do exactly the same again.
And continuing on from that, I guess with. Won't name names, but certain, especially on social media, certain wrestlers coming to the forefront or still being around, having been accused after speaking out and things like that. How important is it that both wrestlers and fans hold those wrestlers and companies that may book them accountable for those actions? And maybe despite having other wrestlers they might want to support on those cards, being like, no, we're not going to support this.
It's interesting. It's a grey area, I think, for a lot of people. And I don't think it's the responsibility necessarily of the fans, but I do think it's the responsibility of the promoters themselves. And that's why I think it's important to have a governing body, because organizations and different kind of companies we see it all in different types of media and different type of industries. If they are self-policing, then they're open to manipulating the rules. Whereas if they have governing bodies, then the interest is in protecting everyone involved rather than financial interests.
Absolutely, no, for sure. And let's move on to what you were saying, the work you're keeping busy with at the minute. Obviously, you've just launched PlayFight. Congratulations, by the way, it's fantastic. You just had your first session as we're recording this last night, but by the time this goes out, probably about a week before. So how was that? How did it go?
So yeah, we did with. Yeah, so it's been a few months of like process and setup and everything like that, and it was really great to see. Like even the last 3 weeks, like bear in mind we have a very small daughter. She's only 2, and we don't really have much childcare, so we're kind of like juggling all of this whole setup, organizing equipment, buying equipment, this making sure the building is safe and adequate for people to comfortably perform in and wrestle and do gymnastics. So yeah, it's been a real toll on us, kind of like energy drain, like physical, emotional, making sure we're ticking all the boxes and making sure that we're trying to set up essentially a wrestling space, a professional wrestling school, as well as like a kind of like an action space for professionals, people that actually want to take their craft seriously, because and it's been really great to see people's reactions when they walk into the building for the first time, because we did our test class on Saturday mainly to see whether there was any areas that we overlooked, like safety wise, or we could have organized the room better and general flow. And just having people in the room was great to actually see them play and light up and be able to kind of go, oh wow, there's so many possibilities of things that I can kind of learn and do here. And it's kind of like I've built this kind of playground for adults, and that's the best way. And that's why and that's why it's called PlayFight. PlayFight, play is really important, and it's kind of the best way that as children we learn by playing, and we don't judge it too much. But as adults we judge it and we beat ourselves up and be like, it's like take 2 children trying to learn a cartwheel. One may be able to do it, and the other one just keeps playing, and eventually it will get better. It does improve because they want to participate and they're not judging their actions. And it's play is a way of learning, and it's a part of failing and developing. And I think that's very much how wrestling particularly needs to be moved forward. I don't think it's rather than saying, well, you can't do this because X, Y, or Z. It's about exploring what you can do and how you can be a part of this obscure performance art known as professional wrestling.
And I was going to say, you mentioned performance art there, and that's something I want to pick up on, because you seem to have a real passion for that side of wrestling. When, first of all, I guess, when did that develop in your wrestling career, or your love for wrestling? When did you start that affinity with the more performance aspect of it?
Well, I think with it comes before wrestling. So I did theatre and performance and dance and stuff like that when I was like early teenager and child, all the way up until I was about 18. And then when I started wrestling, I kind of like shunned all of that side, because I was like, well, I treat it like a martial art because I've been doing years of that and learn the technique. And no one really ever kind of said to me, this, it's obvious it's a performance, right? But no one really kind of explained to me that, you need to take these elements of performance and then put them into wrestling. You only when I was trained, I only got taught moves and how to do like technical holds. So I think that, and it took me a long time to kind of find the confidence and the freedom to kind of step in the ring and challenge the performance of what I was doing. And I think that, like, for example, like training at the London School of Lucha Libre, when I first started there about 6 years ago. And I've been wrestling for like 4 years before that, but I started there, and that was kind of like, for me, it was a finishing school because they allowed me to um, perform and actually come out of my shell. And I think that was when I realized, when I saw the kind of combination of wrestling and cabaret, and I was like, well, they were exactly the same in how they're performed and how you manage a crowd, that and stand up. The similarities are once you realize the similarities, then you're like, wow, well, what else can I do with this wrestling? And taking wrestling out of the context of wrestling and putting it into cabaret pieces. This is a venture that I started with my partner probably about 5 years ago, mixing wrestling and circus, wrestling and dance, wrestling and that was really liberating for me because it made me realize I can do literally anything with this very niche skill that I've learned.
Absolutely. And you sort of use that performance aspect not just for yourself in the ring, but you work with others as well. We spoke recently to Heather Badenberg, who said you helped her with her Mummy Versus show, which she did. And you've been working with Resurgence, haven't you, on that upcoming show that's going to be broadcast. Performance wrestling, like you mentioned there, is something that is becoming more and more popular, more and more entertaining for people to come and watch. What do you say to those people who, I guess, are the naysayers of that, who are like, no, it's wrestling, it should be about the wrestling?
Well, you can like what you like, right? And if you like the more traditional kind of style, that's perfectly fine. I love that too, and it does have its relevance. But I think for the more mainstream and pushing wrestling to be respected as a performance art and stepping away from this idea that it's a real sport is liberating for it. And I think the more that we can kind of play with the formula, the more that the general populace will realize actually how good it is as an art form. And I feel that what I did with Wrestling Resurgence particularly really, I've been doing this sort of stuff for about 5 years, as I said, with my partner, but now, it's been filmed, recorded and put all together with these crazy ideas, and I'm actually really excited for people to actually see it.
And what was with the Resurgence show, what was the whole process like to get it done? How did it feel? How did it all come about?
Yeah, it was really exciting because when it was originally pitched to me by Sam West, he had these ideas and these styles, and then I started to kind of like push it, and I was like, oh, could we have this magic act? Could we have this? Could we have, like taking these old concepts of the wrestler versus the beast, like the lion, and diving into the history, and the history of wrestling is really important because then you can see where it's come from, and knowing your art form as a performer, what we can do is start to play with that history and bring it into maybe a contemporary format. And there will be, I'm kind of really just to the point where I'm just kind of, I can't wait for everyone to see it, because some people, as I said, the more traditional people with wrestling, again, I absolutely hate this, and that's fine. But people that like want to see wrestling pushed more into performance styles, then they'll love it. And being a part of that crew and having an opportunity to direct and work with Richard Crowley and behind the scenes, when it comes to the filming, it was a real pleasure. I've done film work before and stuff like that, but it was I felt like I was in charge of making this kind of madness work. And that was a real challenge and a real enjoyable challenge.
Amazing. And you mentioned sort of how wrestling goes through peaks and troughs, ups and downs, and goes through different stages of development as well, different stages of evolution almost. Do you see sort of performance wrestling as that next evolution that's going to be sort of for the next few years, bringing the crowds in? Because you get a lot more cabaret acts now in wrestling and acts like that. Do you see that as the future of maybe Brit Rest or Indie Rest generally?
Potentially, like I think it can go in two different like it can go in multiple different directions, really, more than two. But I think you'll have um, more of your kind of obscene kind of cabaret style performance pieces around wrestling, which would be really interesting, and that's something that I really enjoy doing. But then you have the other side, which I really enjoy doing, the more kind of MMA shoot style wrestling that is. So I think like you can go in different directions with it, and I feel that both of these have massive audiences and potential. And I guess the best way to say it is, I don't know, anything to do with wrestling, I love the lot. Like I like this style, and I like this style, and I like this and this and this. And I think the people that really are passionate about where it progresses are gonna love all styles.
Absolutely, and that brings us back to PlayFight as well. How long before you launched recently was this in development? How long was it did it take from the brainchild to getting it going to launch?
It's been something that's been on the cards for probably about a year. The process has been about a year, and this idea of trying to set up a school where I really like the idea, because I come from a martial arts background, quite a strict martial arts background, the idea of wrestling being kind of graded. And this, and the problem, that's a problem because it's a performance. It's a performance art. So what am I grading otherwise? But what I can do, and I like the idea of the idea stemmed from trying to make sure people were safe enough so that then they do feel confident and prepared to start to experiment. I stick to the basic principle of isolation. So isolation, integration, improvisation, like you're learning the language. So we're learning the language of wrestling. We learn a few words, isolation, then we start to integrate, we start to learn sentences, sentence structure, grammar, understand why it works, and then we start to be creative with it, and then we learn how to kind of stop painting by numbers and learn how to break the rules when it's right to break the rules. And I think that's what people get stuck in, this middle section, because they think that wrestling needs to be this way. But if we can kind of get more creativity, then the performance and as a whole, wrestling will completely evolve and change into something else. The more people feel more liberated to kind of just take risks, performative risks, not like daft high spot risks.
Absolutely. And for anyone who may watch this and would want to come down, or seeing what you're doing and would want to come down, is there a skill range you're looking at to start with, or is it sort of anyone can come, we'll help anyone out?
Yeah, so level 1 would be a grade 1 wrestling would be where you would start for anyone. That is kind of like an open door, so you can come give it a try, see if it's right for you. Learn a handful of things and decide whether that this is kind of the place you want to learn. And same with the gymnastics. We've also got like a level 1 gymnastics squad, which is again open for all. We'll take you through the basic shaping, basic rolling, to building yourself to a round off backflip, and that will be your level 1 kind of class. So yeah, and there's possibilities for you to do both. We've put together a membership package where you can do 1 wrestling a week and 1 gymnastics a week if you kind of, and it's great to have them, because they're not mutually exclusive at all. And for those that have learned, gymnastics with us, especially during lockdown, and actually getting them in the ring for our first session was really exciting, because I had someone come up to me and say, do you know what, I actually noticed the difference from when I was training before. I feel like I can now control my body, whereas I couldn't. So the benefits of gymnastics and the partnership together, will just give you a better foundation rather than just doing gym work and making yourself tight, fluid and strong at the same time.
And you mentioned obviously setting up with your partner. You on the website as well. You advertise it as a family-run company. How important was that family aspect for you?
Yeah, like it's massively important because my daughter, particularly, and my partner, my daughter's been there since we set up the gymnastics school originally back in 2019 and in the January, and she was born in February, and she was there the week after, sitting in her pram. So she's been every single one, and this idea of kind of she's so active, she's involved. We're building a community. It's not you're stepping into our family venue, and it's a very different approach from I feel that wrestling kind of normally has, where it's kind of very aggressive. It's normally like in kind of like a smallish venue that's a bit dark, whereas this is kind of like light and open, and it's a lot more accessible, I think, rather than other places that you traditionally get trained in. Not to say that they're bad places. It's just less masculine and more kind of family. Yeah.
Brilliant. And so what would your, I guess, promo be for PlayFight, for anyone who, again, is watching this and thinks, you know what, I'd like to come down to that? What would you say to encourage them to be like, yeah, come on down, give us a go?
That's a good point. Like, do you know what? If you want to even kind of take a relook at where you are in wrestling, it's the best place to go, because like some of the people that I'm working with now have been wrestling for years, and they wanted to put themselves back into grade 1 and grade 2, and these people I would consider like falling into the professional bracket. But by them doing that, is they're testing themselves. They want to see actually what they know and what they have learned, and to actually kind of be like, okay, do I know all of these skills on this syllabus? And do I know them well enough to perform each one? And I guess that, it's not a very good like promo for the school necessarily, but I guess it's a way of kind of, rather than relying on someone to tell you that you're ready, you'll start to understand that, okay, well, I've completed this level, so I am getting better. So there is a sense of achievement, and you are working towards being safe enough and to be able to experiment.
No, absolutely. I think that's a brilliant promo for it. And we talked about theatrical wrestling. There are a few people, I'd say, on the Brit Wrest scene at the minute more theatrical than Cara Noir. Take me back to the beginning of that, because I remember reading a little while ago that you sort of credited Chris Brooks with helping you stay in wrestling around 2017. That he's the one that sort of convinced you not to hang up your boots, as it were. And I also remember reading that somewhere, correct me if I'm wrong, that he's the one that helped you come up with this Cara Noir character. Is that correct?
Who was the name? Sorry,
Chris Brooks.
Chris Brooks. Chris is definitely someone that has helped massively and was there when I was kind of performing Cara for the first time. And when we would run, I would do Hope in Mansfield and Leicester, and he would always be there at the shows and give advice and kind of give me pointers and really kind of celebrate what I was doing. There have been there's loads of people I could stick on this list, like loads of people as well, from people that didn't even realize they had an effect, like Pete Dunne's a great example. I wrestled him literally as he was, I think, a couple of weeks after the UK tournament, and it was I think it was a dark match because it couldn't go out on the live streamed pay-per-view. And I wrestled him afterwards, and I was still wrestling as my old character. And then he pulled me aside and said to me, like, you know, what's this Cara thing that you're doing? And I just explained it and how it, you know, made me happy, and I hated what I was doing before, and it just felt stagnant. And it's just like simply him saying, "Well, just do what you know, what makes you feel happy." That is an example of just someone giving me permission to go out and just try something. And yeah, that people like, you know, Chris was influential in that. You know, I'm very thankful to Lucha Britannia and them letting me perform as Cara for the first time there, and allow me to kind of like develop the character, because the character that you see now and a lot of the things that I do and a lot of the performance styles and influences I've thrown in more kind of like bigger platforms like Progress or WXW and so on and so forth. I've done them like years ago, and I've enhanced the performance style, and I know what works now, you know, for that character. Whereas if you'd have taken Cara and put him into Progress 5 years ago, it wouldn't have been right, because I needed people like Chris Brooks and Pete Dunne, and like Ryan Smile is another example of someone that you know, would book me on Lucha Forever, and you know, was very thankful. And I remember him coming backstage one time when I was still doing both characters, not at that show, but I was doing Cara at that show, and I was doing the black belt character at other shows. And he come backstage after I'd done the match, and he said, "You just need to stop doing this Tom Dawkins shit now." And I was like, "Oh, okay." Yeah, so I did. Like, literally, I started just emailing promoters saying, "I'm going to not do this anymore." So yeah, there's hundreds of people that have like helped along the way, and there are three that just instantly come to mind.
And you mentioned that doing what makes you happy. Did you feel instantly that difference stepping out as Cara Noir? That joy, that more joy. Did you feel happier doing it?
Yeah, it kind of felt liberating to the point where, because I have this martial arts side and I have this performance side, and before I was ignoring this for years, and now it felt, as soon as I did Cara for the first time, that it all joined together and it was whole. And to feel that the realm of possibilities open up, that, oh, wrestling isn't this kind of paint by numbers structure. Oh, I can literally do anything, you know. I can like, even to the you know, to the extent of trying to explore emotional depth with the character and kind of really kind of see how I can make people laugh, cry, you know, pop, as we would say. But like, yeah, I definitely feel completely liberated by doing it, and actually kind of, it's an opportunity to also kind of play with, you know, my own childhood trauma and touch on that and bring it out in a performance in a cathartic way.
No, sure, absolutely. And I imagine, like you said, you pick up on that must help as well as a sort of almost therapy.
Yeah.
And how do you think, I mean, how important do you feel that is, maybe not just for yourself, but for other wrestlers, other performers, whether it's in wrestling or not, to be able to express themselves or let something go through what they're doing?
Yeah, I definitely think it's an important thing. I'm an advocate for therapy and have been doing therapy on and off for years. And I think it's really important to understand. I think to have this separation of character and identity is really important as well, because there is a lot of the time where you can also get lost in your character. You see it where they are their character on Twitter in real life, and then they start to lose a sense of self. And I think that I was really, when I started performing as Cara, I really was like, well, Tom, myself, I know it's speaking in third person, but I perform Cara, and I was very clear about that from the beginning, because I kind of didn't want this kind of obscure mix of, you know, yeah, Cara's a character. Cara's not going to talk about political issues necessarily because he's a character in wrestling. Tom can, but Cara's not.
And that's why, I guess, as we were setting this up on your email chain, you have, Cara Noir performed by Tom Dawkins on it to really keep that separation.
Yeah, to keep that separation and to, and also if I ever change or decide that Cara's that's that and that's had its time, Tom, me myself will want to perform as something else, and I want to have the credit for the performance that I did then. And it can evolve. And wrestlers, there should be credits because we are performers, and if there's credits, then you realize that X wrestler isn't doing something horrific because they're a horrible person. They're actually just performing a scenario that we have to deal with in everyday life. No different from scenes played out in soap operas.
Absolutely. No, fantastic way to put it. And it's been, for yourself as Cara Noir, it's been a wild couple of years, let's say. I think that's probably fair as an understatement. Obviously, wrestling Pac at Riptide, becoming Progress champion, 16 Carat as well. When was the moment for you, even if it was before all that, as Cara Noir, when you thought, okay, there's something here that's different to what I was doing before. I'm getting that push, that reaction that you were wanting.
That's interesting. It was when I started doing Cara, it was when I kind of stopped caring, but in a positive way. I stopped judging myself and my performances, and I stopped filtering them through what Tom was doing. I can filter every performance through what the character of Cara, as I was saying a second ago. And I think, I guess, I'm quite a shy person and can be a little bit too humble sometimes with certain things. And it took me a long while, and it still does take me a long time to kind of go, oh, this is working, or, that was good, or, I'm very much like, I like to look back, dissect it, feel the audience, and, have, get that sort of feedback from them as a whole, and then judge the performance that way. And it's hard to say, it definitely was fast, let's put it that way. And it's hard to kind of sit there and go, okay, every time something big happened, like Carat winning the 16 Carat, which was an honor, winning the Progress title, which was incredible, and it's kind of like, what do you do with it? As in, as an actual person, not as a character, but as a person. Where do you go? Where do you go with that? Do I deserve it or do I not? You don't want to have imposter syndrome, but you want to be very it's a really interesting dynamic because it is a performance, right? So it's an honor that those companies are investing in you, and that's the best way to see it. And it was so quick. It was a lot of turmoil for a period of time. And I think, the godsend of COVID, is the fact that it's allowed us to kind of normalize for a period of time. Because, it may not stay like that forever. It might pick up again and go crazy.
Absolutely. And I want to touch on Progress first. Obviously, you won the title, and then not long after, COVID hit, and you're taking this big break, and now coming back without fans. What has that been like as the person who at the minute is holding the top belt in the company to come back without fans, to be wrestling in that way?
It's just meant that what I would normally filter for in wrestling matches is audience reaction. And that's really hard to not have. As a performer, it's kind of like doing stand-up to no one. But we're lucky because we have the commentary team nearby, so I can actually hear what they're saying and how they're reacting. So that gives us a kind of a real opportunity to kind of judge our tempo, if that makes sense. But having an opportunity to, how I see it is, wrestling needed to have the speaking out movement. And I think that there has a lot of things that have changed since then, right? And that's really, really positive. And I feel that, yes, we're in a different environment, and yes, it's a lot of fresh faces now in progress, and a lot of companies, which has created a lot of opportunities for younger talent. And what I feel now is I'm now in a process of just trying to help everyone and bring everyone up, in the best way I can, and yeah, that's what it's really meant. I kind of felt like I was like trying to set the bar for what the tape performances can be. And I think as they, as we go on and I know what's coming, I'm really excited, because I think Progress's development throughout this tapings have got significantly better and better and better and better, and how they put their production across, because like everyone, when, during the pandemic happened, we all had to adapt and change, and some things worked, some things didn't work. But yeah, like the Progress as a company have done an incredible job and massively looked after all the performers, which I don't think they get credit for.
And you talked about wanting to sort of bring up that younger talent coming through as well. I don't know if you saw it, but we did a chat with Luke Jacobs where he spoke about his match with you after he won the MPS. And he talked about how great it was to work with you and how much he'd learnt from both wrestling you and watching you wrestle. Is it nice to be able to give back in that way, to help that next generation of BritWres come through?
Yeah, but it also helped me as well. So it was a great pleasure to work with, younger talent like Luke, and fresher faces, because it makes me have to work like differently. I have to learn what's current to them. So it also will change the performance style. And working with Luke was a real pleasure. Like ever since I watched him and Ethan wrestle in Germany for the first time, and they did the Ambition tournament. If you haven't seen the Ambition tournament in WXW, watch it, because they have a match in there that was incredible. They just kicked the crap out of each other pretty much. But yeah, it was one of the best matches on the card. And from that point on, and then when I found out that the match was going to happen, I was like, okay, well, this is going to be really, really good. And yeah, it was just a pleasure to work with, and he's again such a humble performer, and I just I learned just, he might have said he learned a lot from me, but I always learned a lot from every opponent that I wrestle, and it's just fun to experiment with someone with such a unique style, like a different style like Luke has.
And as obviously, as we mentioned, as Progress champ, how much are you looking forward to now that audiences can come back to wrestling? How much are you looking forward to stepping back out at Progress in front of a crowd?
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. It's going to be absolutely incredible, and I'll probably cry as soon as I walk out, because it will just feel overwhelming. But there's also a slight part of me that will worry that when I walk out for the first time, that people will be like, I don't know. You can't gauge your reaction, right? You never can tell. And I just worried that people will be like, I don't care anymore. And I'm just like, oh.
It's almost like coming back from an injury. Almost like coming back from an injury where you're like, will they still care about me, sort of thing, except it's reversed almost.
And it's different trying to connect with an audience, via pre-recorded tapings, because you can't, there's no direct feedback. So I don't know whether people are, invested, or not. And, but yeah, I can't wait to step out in front of a live crowd, because it would just be like, oh, it'd be like coming home, right? It seems
like so long ago.
Yeah, exactly right. And walking out and seeing, I don't know, friends is the best way to say it. I always see like people like I always see fans as friends because they're the ones that are willing to help and invest in you and buy your products and want to support. So there's definitely kind of a connection there. So that's to walk out and actually have a live audience would be breathtaking.
And I want to take you back to Riptide as well, before even the pack match, because you were having some stellar matches there, and it looked like, correct me if I'm wrong, it looked like there was a storyline building with you where you were having these great matches, but just coming up short each time, like against TK Cooper, against Cassius, against Chris Ridgway. Now that the Riptiders have sort of gone on a bit of a hiatus and they've cancelled all their current storylines, can I ask, what was that a storyline? And if so, what was the plan with that? Was there a plan there?
Yeah, there was a plan for it. I don't know how much I would want to give away, but there was a end goal, and Joshua Riptide was very giving in the fact that he allowed me to kind of craft this narrative that and a path with and a direction on where we were going with it, and it was going to be a story that was going to challenge me probably as a performer more than anything I'd ever done. It's just a shame that that's possibly not going to happen now, and different context. But never say never on that one.
I was going to say, is that something you'd want? Would you like that, if possible? Obviously, we're not trying to twist Josh's arm here and be like, make it happen. But is that something you'd like? Would you like it to continue? What was planned, the way it was going to play out?
Yeah, maybe. Like, it's interesting because I always overthink everything, and it's part of my nature. And maybe it would be right to revisit it, or maybe it was a thing of the past and would have been good 2 years ago, but maybe it doesn't fit now. Who knows? Like, it would have to be. I'd have to really think about that.
No, we'll see. Absolutely. Well, we look forward to all of that hopefully coming out. But and I know you've spoken about this before, but I've got to ask, because we've got you here, the match with Pac. Obviously, we listed it as our favourite Riptide match since their launch. It's been heralded as such a great match. Take us back to before that, because obviously we didn't know it was going to be Pac until he came out the curtain. When did you find out, and what was that like when you found out?
I found out like 3 or 4 months before the event.
Really?
And the interesting thing is, I've been booked before against like big name import talent that just didn't transpire. So I never really kind of get excited when people say, oh, you're going to wrestle so and so. Like, when I was quite early on, I was booked to wrestle Chris Hero, and that he got injured the night before, so that didn't happen. Or booked to wrestle Ricochet, and that didn't happen because he got pulled because of contractual things. So, like, that's always, part of the course. And it wasn't literally until the day that I walked into the day of the event that I walked in and he was sat there, and I was like, okay, so it's going to happen then. So, and I never kind of get excited until after, and it was so enjoyable, and he's such a professional, so giving, so and I remember watching hand filmed footage post that match, just him walking out in the entrance alone, and the reaction. I don't think it does it justice on demand video at all. It was so intense that I, even in that moment, I tried everything in my being not to just kind of like completely like just get overwhelmed and cry in that moment, just because it was just so intense. But yeah, like, it was it was a big moment. It was kind of a make or break. Like, you have to hit it out of the park, or it just, and it was, Pac made it really easy. It just made it, it just felt like, it wasn't, it's great.
And I want to pick up on two things you mentioned there. The first is standing in the ring, because I was there at watching it. I was there at the event, and standing in the ring when Pac comes out and that pop goes up. I know in the crowd it's the loudest pop I've ever heard at a wrestling event. How was it in the ring? What did it sound like in there? That wave of noise coming over you.
Yeah, it was interesting because it was like a ripple. Because there was a few people that knew the music, and then it kind of like fed round from the people that saw him walk out first, because he comes from the side, and it just kind of like cycled through the entire building. And from that point on, it was like hysteria. We were just everyone was just so excited, and I think that kind of fueled the energy of the match even more than it already, was potentially going to be.
And the other part of the match, that obviously it was a fantastic match and is rightly heralded, but the one particular part of it I want to ask about, whether it was something that was planned or whether you just sort of came up with it on the fly, is the handshake. How did that come about? When was that idea plotted?
So I like, Pac had a few matches beforehand on the independent circuit in the UK, and my thing was, I always go into every match on how it can be our match. I never want it to be a Pac match, a so-and-so match, right? I want it to be our match, a piece that we developed together. And the idea was, for me, well, Cara's a bastard, really. A bit of a bastard, He doesn't really follow the rules, but he's out for, but he's, yeah. But then so is Pac. But he's meant to be like the king of the bastards, and it's just this idea. It's like, of course I'm going to want to shake your hand, because we kind of have a very similar mindset, really. And it just kind of went from there. Like, it's such a good key moment of that match, and it's something that kind of gives it its own identity beyond, just being a Cara match or just being a Pac match. It's a Cara and Pac match. We built that together with that kind of style.
And as someone, I guess, sort of almost rounding off, as someone who's so busy, who does so much in and out of the ring, do you have? I guess what I'm getting at is, do you have a plan for Cara Noir moving forward? Is there, whether it's booking wise a month or like 3 months or a year, do you sort of have a rough plan of like what you want to do with the character and how you want to evolve and what you want to be doing in month after month after month?
Yeah, like it's definitely it's an ever evolving character, and there's no point that I'll ever pigeonhole that character into you're this style or you're this thing or you do this, and the character, I can see it evolving and changing, and there's something that's there over here in kind of like, in my thoughts that I'm kind of trying to work on. But when it's ready and it's the right time, then, it will either gradually evolve into that, or it will be a bit like all or nothing, which is very much my style, and just kind of be like, no, done with that, we're going to do this instead.
Amazing. Well, Tom, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me. If it's all right with you, we're just going to end with a little segment we've got called Matches That Shaped My Life.
Okay.
So I'm going to throw a few scenarios out at you, and you just sort of let me know the matches that spring to mind straight away. So
okay, go on.
The first one is the first match I remember watching.
First match I remember watching. Oh God, now put me on the spot. I'm sure it was something rubbish, like no, I've got it. So the one that sticks out, rather than the first match, the first event that I watched was the Royal Rumble 2000, and I think the opener was like Taz or something. like that, Taz and Angle, or the Hardys and the Dudley Boys. That's what I remember. That one show for me is like the perfect show, and I still kind of hold it in like quite high regard in my head, even though it's nowhere near, a perfect show. But yeah, that's, as a child, that was like, that's the thing that glued me to the TV.
And the next question might be similar, it might be something you just said, but the next one is the match that made me want to be a wrestler.
The match that made me want to be a wrestler. Oh, that is a good question. These are hard.
Yeah, sorry, I put you on the spot here.
These are hard. Do you know what? I think it's got to be one of the Shawn Michaels matches. And I think it's got to be it's got to be Shawn Michaels, I think, because like when especially he started doing his second run, that was really why I got familiar with Shawn. As a performer, and like I think that I can't think of the match specifically that stands out, but like that series of matches, because he was smaller. He's not really that small, but in the world of WWE, he was a smaller guy, and I was like, oh, well, if he does it, maybe I can do it. So yeah, some sort of match with Shawn Michaels, maybe. I'm blanking. I think him and Jericho, they did one at like WrestleMania, I think.
I feel like his mid-noughties run is so underrated in terms of, he was great before he left, but I feel like that era is better. I think that era of Shawn Michaels is a better Shawn Michaels.
Yeah, it was a different run, and it seemed more of a matured performer by that point. Yeah, it was great.
So someone comes up to you and asks, "What's wrestling?" What do you show them?
I would show them anything but the WWE wrestling, like, because how I would used to show people wrestling would be like, oh, I've been doing this thing called wrestling. Do you want to come and see it? And I would never invite them to like the normal kind of shows, but I would always invite them to a Lucha Britannia show. The reason why is because I guarantee, even if they hate the wrestling, they'll have a few drinks, they'll watch some cabaret, and they'll see how ludicrous the whole thing is, that they'll feel welcome. And I don't think that's always cultivated in every crowd and every audience, but the kind of, and if you don't know wrestling, you'll like lucha.
I totally get that. I've got mates that hate wrestling, and I like drag them along to indie shows, and I'm like, come and watch it, and they leave loving it, and they would have loved it. I'm like, yeah, I told you, it's great.
Next one is my first match.
What, my first match? Wow. My first match was like 2010, in front of, as I said, I think previously, in front of like 12 people in Chingford. It was dreadful. I was only wrestling for like 3 months by that point. I'd only been training for about 3 months, but because of the martial arts background, I kind of just got thrown into the ring. Oh, you can do stuff. Go do a match. And it happened to be the main event of that show, and I was like, should not have been there. And the guy that I wrestled, like, overplanned so much that I just blanked everything. It was a proper car crash. I'm sure someone's got it on film somewhere, and it might resurface one day.
That is serious pressure to be main event of your first match.
I know, it was proper, overkill, right?
The next one is the toughest opponent I've faced.
The toughest opponent I've faced. Oh, God. The toughest opponent I faced. It depends on what context you would say toughest. Like,
I think for this, we're sort of going with whatever you would define tough as.
Exactly, right? Yeah, that's interesting. Do you know, like tough for like endurance, one that's like real kind of like performance style and everything like that instantly stands out. Like Speedball comes to mind as a like genuine tough individual. Ilya comes to mind as someone that's like, on another level of insanity than I am. There's so many. Like Eddie Kingston, a great example. Like I met him in in the ring at Carat, 16 Carat, and standing in the ring, I think I do my entrance first. This long-winded 4-minute entrance, and then he just walks to the ring and gets in the ring and just looks me dead in the eye, and I was like, perfect opposite of what we just experienced. And genuinely, I thought he was there to, fuck me up pretty much.
Amazing. And similarly, moving on, is the next one is the best match I've ever had.
So there's a lot of matches that I would put in. I think the best one, I think in fans' opinions, would be like Pac, Ilya, the series with Ilya. One of my favourite matches that I think I've ever done was at Lucha Britannia. But probably no one's ever going to see it. And it was the first time I ever did. It was with one of the performers called Stakely Bakewell, who doesn't perform anymore. And we did this whole piece. And that was the first time I ever used the egg in a match with him. So it was kind of this obscene comedy piece that kind of built into this craziness. And then all of a sudden, there was this switch at the end where I grabbed one of the performers into the ring and threatened to hit her with a chair until he lied down. And it kind of escalated to the point where Lucha's quite a fun place to kind of like watch a show. It's all lively and fun and jovial. But that gear shift made people kind of just... There was people in the front row that were just angry, disappointed, in tears, and people were completely like broken from this moment. And I still think that's one of my favorite matches, and it's one of the most liberating matches, realizing how important like taking people on an emotional journey is.
Absolutely. And the final one, you've done very well here. I know you said it was tough questions. I know we sort of pushed them at you, but it's very good. The final one is probably a bit of a tougher one as well to end with. It's what would you say is the best moment you've either had or seen in wrestling? Basically, wrestling's greatest moment in your mind.
Wow. That's a hard one, especially one for being put on the spot with. But yeah, there's I can tell you my moments rather than wrestling's greatest moments, but I think like the winning of the Progress title and that reaction was so intense that I can't help but watch it now. Like if I've watched it back, it kind of still gives me kind of like goosebumps and it kind of makes me kind of tear up. I guess 16 Carat was another one because it kind of I don't break character. Sometimes I break character on purpose. Sometimes I don't. I don't break character very often. But I stood on the entranceway and broke character, and I'm just like, this actual tournament marks 10 years in wrestling exactly, and I kind of was like, that felt like a significant moment for me, and yeah. I guess that they're the ones that kind of stand out, and there's so many, there's so many good moments that I've had with wrestling, in the ring and out of the ring with other performers.
Which I guess is a lovely thing to say. Like obviously, no matter how much longer you keep wrestling as well, it's a lovely thing to look back on, to have that many moments and memories.
Yeah, and that's all it's about, making people feel something, right, and feel those moments, and that's really what makes wrestling very special. And when you try to describe that to other people, it doesn't really make sense. Yeah, until you experience it.
Fantastic, brilliant. Tom, thank you so much again for taking the time to talk to me. It's been a blast. I hope you've enjoyed it as well.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. It's always good to talk about wrestling and reflect on things that I've done, I guess, and to get to kind of have a chat. It was fun. It was so much fun.
Thanks so much. Well, yeah, it was a pleasure for me as well, and congratulations with everything you're doing, and best of luck with everything in the future. And we can't wait to see you back in action once we're allowed back in the arenas.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I can't wait to actually see the audience. It'll be great.
It's going to be great. It's going to be great. Thanks so much. Have a great day. Have a great rest of your afternoon.